The crystal ballroom of the Rosewood Hotel sparkled with 1,000 points of light, each crystal chandelier casting rainbow prisms across the faces of elegantly dressed guests. I stood in the shadows near the entrance, watching the scene unfold before me like some bizarre theater production. The bride, my sister Olivia, floated through the crowd in her designer wedding gown, accepting congratulations with practiced grace. Our parents, George and Margaret Wilson, followed in her wake like proud satellites, their faces glowing with the kind of joy they'd never shown for me. "Just sign here, Ms. Martinez," the wedding coordinator whispered, extending a tablet with the final payment authorization for the venue. I suppressed a smile at the false name I'd used to purchase the Rosewood Hotel chain 3 years ago. If only they knew that Elena Martinez, the mysterious hotel magnate, was actually Elena Wilson, the daughter they declared dead a decade ago. I scrawled my signature and handed back the tablet, adjusting the elegant mask that covered the upper half of my face. The masquerade theme had been Olivia's idea, though I doubted she realized how perfectly it served my purpose. Behind their own masks, not even my parents recognized the daughter they'd erased. The ceremony was beautiful, I murmured to the coordinator, my voice carrying the slight Spanish accent I cultivated for my Elena Martinez persona. "Your staff has done an excellent job." She beamed at the praise, unaware that I signed her paychecks. "Thank you, Ms. Martinez. We're so honored you came personally to oversee the Wilson wedding. They're one of Boston's most prominent families, you know." I knew all too well. The Wilsons had been Boston aristocracy for generations, their shipping empire dating back to the 1800s. That legacy of success and perfection had been everything to my parents, and the reason they found it so easy to erase their defective daughter. My crime? Refusing to marry the man they'd chosen for me, the heir to a rival shipping company. At 22, fresh out of business school with dreams of modernizing the family company, I dared to suggest that arranged marriages were outdated, that maybe the shipping industry needed innovation more than it needed mergers through matrimony. The argument that followed still echoed in my nightmares. My father's rage, my mother's cold disappointment, and finally the ultimatum: marry Jonathan Porter or be cut off completely. I chose freedom. The next morning, I emptied my trust fund, a mere $50,000 they'd forgotten to freeze, and disappeared. I spent the first month in a cheap motel, teaching myself everything I could about modern business practices, digital transformation, and venture capital. I changed my appearance, adopted a new accent, and built Elena Martinez from scratch. What I didn't know then was that my parents had chosen to deal with my departure in the most dramatic way possible. Instead of admitting their daughter had defied them, they told everyone I died in a sailing accident off the coast. They even held a funeral, complete with an empty casket and tearful eulogies about their beloved Elena, taken too soon. I learned about my own death 6 months later when I tried to contact my younger sister. The email I sent bounced back, but not before I saw her social media profile picture, Olivia in black, standing beside our parents at my memorial service. That was the moment Elena Wilson truly died and Elena Martinez was born. "Ms. Martinez?" The coordinator's voice pulled me back to the present. "Would you like to be seated for dinner?" I nodded, following her to a table near the back of the ballroom. Close enough to observe everything, far enough to maintain my cover. The irony of paying for my sister's wedding venue and owning the mansion our parents still lived in wasn't lost on me. Over the past decade, I'd systematically purchased every property the Wilsons used, every hotel they frequented, and a controlling interest in most of their business partners. They just didn't know it yet. My father's voice suddenly carried across the room, loud enough to reach my table. "Everyone, if I could have your attention, please." The crowd quieted as George Wilson raised his champagne glass. He cut an impressive figure in his tuxedo, silver hair gleaming under the chandeliers. 10 years had added distinguished lines to his face, but hadn't diminished his commanding presence. "Today is a day of joy, celebrating the marriage of my only daughter, Olivia, to the love of her life." Only daughter. The words hit like a physical blow, even after all these years. "But it's also a day tinged with bittersweetness," he continued, his voice thick with practiced emotion. "I can't help but think of our beloved Elena, Olivia's sister, who left us far too soon. She would have loved to see this day." Beside him, my mother dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief, the perfect breathing mother still mourning her lost child. If only they knew that lost child was sitting 30 feet away, controlling more wealth and power than the Wilson family had accumulated in 6 generations. A server appeared at my elbow. "More champagne, Ms. Martinez?" I accepted the glass, using the moment to collect myself. I hadn't come here for revenge, or at least, that's what I told myself. I'd built my empire through genuine innovation, transforming struggling businesses into modern powerhouses. The fact that I now controlled most of my family's business interests was just convenient. Such a shame about their older daughter. The elderly woman seated beside me whispered, clearly hoping to share gossip with the mysterious hotel owner. The poor girl died in a sailing accident. They say she was quite troubled before the end, defying her parents, refusing a brilliant marriage match. Some even whispered she might have, She made a vague gesture. Done it on purpose. My fingers tightened around the champagne flute. Of course they'd implied my death was suicide. It fit their narrative of the rebellious daughter who couldn't handle the pressure of their expectations. Better than admitting the truth, that I'd chosen freedom over their suffocating control. The sound of clinking glass drew everyone's attention. Olivia had stood to make her own speech, her new husband beaming beside her. My little sister had grown into a stunning woman, though her beauty had a brittle quality that reminded me of our mother. "Thank you all for being here today," she began, her voice carrying the same finishing school polish I'd once been forced to learn. "As Father said, this day is perfect in almost every way. The only thing missing is my dear sister, Elena." I took a slow sip of champagne, watching her performance. Elena was more than my big sister. She was my best friend, my protector, my role model. Olivia's voice wavered perfectly. "When we were little, she used to tell me that anything was possible if you were brave enough to chase your dreams. I just wish," she paused for dramatic effect, "I just wish she could see that I finally found my dream." The crowd murmured sympathetically. I fought the urge to laugh. Olivia had been 12 when I left, old enough to understand exactly what our parents had done. She'd chosen their side, happily stepping into the role of perfect only daughter. The sister who'd supposedly been her best friend hadn't even rated a phone call to warn me about my impending death. As dinner was served, I found myself studying the head table. My parents sat there with Olivia and her new husband, along with his equally wealthy family. They looked like something out of a society magazine. Perfectly groomed, perfectly poised, perfectly false. 10 years ago, their perfect facade had crushed me. Now I saw them clearly, small people desperately clinging to outdated power, unaware that the world had changed around them. The shipping industry they'd dominated for generations was transforming, and they hadn't adapted. Their empire was crumbling, propped up only by the secret investments I'd made through shell companies. "Ms. Martinez?" A man in an expensive suit approached my table. I recognized him as James Porter, my almost father-in-law, though he aged considerably. "I hope you're enjoying the evening. I must say, we were surprised and honored when we heard you'd be attending personally." I smiled behind my mask. "I make it a point to oversee special events at my flagship properties, Mr. Porter, especially for such distinguished families." He preened at the compliment. "Yes, well, the Wilsons and Porters have been pillars of Boston society for generations. Though I must admit, recent years have been challenging." "Oh." I kept my tone merely polite, though I knew exactly how challenging things had been for both families. My companies had slowly acquired controlling interests in their major shipping routes, modernizing operations and squeezing their profit margins. "The industry isn't what it used to be," he said, sighing heavily. "These tech startups, these modern logistics companies, they're disrupting everything. Why, just last month we lost our biggest client to some upstart called Phoenix Maritime." I managed not to smile. Phoenix Maritime was one of my first acquisitions, transformed from a failing local shipper into a digital logistics powerhouse. "Progress can be difficult to navigate," I offered diplomatically. "Progress," he scoffed. "In my day, business was built on relationships, on family connections. Did you know my son was supposed to marry George Wilson's older daughter? Now that would have been a merger worth celebrating. But the girl had other ideas." He shook his head. "Tragic. What happened to her? Though perhaps for the best, given her rebellious nature." The crystal flute in my hand threatened to shatter under my grip. Before I could respond, a commotion at the head table drew everyone's attention. My mother had stood up suddenly, swaying slightly, Apparently the champagne had flowed too freely. I simply must say, she announced, her voice carrying that peculiar precision of the elegantly drunk. How wonderful it is to see all our dear friends here, especially those who supported us after we lost our Elena. I sat perfectly still, watching the train wreck unfold. Such a difficult time, she continued, dabbing at her eyes. Having to tell everyone that our daughter, that she, well, the shame of it all. But we preserved the family name, didn't we, George? We gave her a proper send-off, even if she didn't deserve. Margaret. My father's voice cut through her rambling like a steel blade. Perhaps you should sit down. But the champagne had loosened something in my mother's perfect facade. Oh, but darling, I simply must tell Ms. Martinez what an honor it is to have her here. Such a successful woman, and self-made at that. Nothing at all like our poor Elena, who thought she could reject her family obligations and succeed on her own. She laughed, the sound brittle as breaking glass. As if a Wilson could ever survive without family connections. Why ever she didn't even make it a month before. That's enough. My father stood, his face flushed with anger. Margaret, you're making a scene. The ballroom had gone silent, hundreds of guests watching my mother's meltdown with horrified fascination. Olivia was hiding her face in her hands, her new husband patting her shoulder awkwardly. I stood slowly, my chair scraping against the marble floor. The sound drew my mother's attention, and she focused on me with the unsettling intensity of the truly drunk. Ms. Martinez, she called out, you simply must tell us your secret. How does a woman with no family name, no connections, build such an empire? My Elena thought she could do the same, you know. Thought she was smarter than generations of Wilson business sense. And now she's what, mother? The words left my mouth before I could stop them, my careful accent slipping. My mother froze, something flickering across her face. Recognition, impossible as it was. But the moment passed. She blinked at me owlishly, confused by the question from a stranger. My father had reached her by then, taking her arm firmly. I apologize for my wife, he said smoothly. The excitement of the day combined with the memories. Please, everyone, enjoy your dinner. He led my mother away, probably to sleep off the champagne in one of the hotel's luxury suites. Suites I owned, in a hotel I owned, just like I owned the mansion they still lived in and controlling interest in the companies they thought were still theirs. I sank back into my chair, hands trembling slightly. I'd come too close to revealing myself, letting old pain override a decade of careful planning. The elderly woman beside me patted my arm sympathetically. Don't mind them, dear, she said. Old money families like the Wilsons, they can't handle change. Today's world belongs to people like you, self-made, forward-thinking. Why, I heard your hotel chain is expanding into shipping and logistics now. Among other things, I murmured, recovering my accent. She had no idea that my hotel chain was just the tip of the iceberg. Through various shell corporations and holding companies, Elena Martinez controlled an empire worth billions, built specifically to systematically dismantle everything the Wilsons had ever valued. The rest of dinner passed in a blur of small talk and subtle observation. I watched my sister dance with her new husband, my father smooth things over with embarrassed guests, my mother nowhere to be seen. They looked exactly like what they were, relics of a dying era, clinging to appearances while their real power slipped away. When I finally stood to leave, the wedding coordinator rushed over. Ms. Martinez, will you be staying the night? We've prepared the presidential suite. No, I said quietly, watching my father lead a round of toasts. I think I've seen enough family drama for one evening. She laughed nervously, clearly uncertain how to respond to her boss's dry tone. I handed her a thick envelope, a wedding gift for my sister, though she'd never know who it was really from. Make sure the bride and groom have everything they need, I instructed, and send some water and aspirin to Mrs. Wilson's room. She'll need it tomorrow. As I walked out of the crystal ballroom, I heard my father's voice one last time, to family, the most precious thing we have. I didn't turn around. Elena Wilson was dead, after all, they'd made sure of that themselves. But Elena Martinez was very much alive, and she was just getting started. In my car, I pulled out my phone and dialed my assistant. Maya, execute phase 2. It's time the Wilsons learned exactly who they're dealing with. The next few weeks would change everything. But that's another part of the story. The morning after Olivia's wedding, I sat in my penthouse office overlooking Boston Harbor. watching the Wilson shipping vessels crawl across the water like tiny, obsolete insects. My mother's drunken outburst had accelerated my timeline, but perhaps that was for the best. 10 years of silent accumulation had positioned all the pieces perfectly. Now it was time to play the game. "The numbers are in from last night," Maya announced, entering with her tablet. My assistant of 8 years was the only person who knew both Elena Martinez and Elena Wilson. The Wilson Porter wedding cost them just over $300,000. They put it all on credit. I nodded, unsurprised. And their current financial position? Critical. Maya pulled up detailed spreadsheets. Wilson Shipping's quarterly losses have hit $12 million. They've mortgaged everything they own, which technically means they've mortgaged everything you own, since you hold all their properties through shell companies. They're 3 months behind on payments to Phoenix Maritime, which means they're 3 months behind on payments to me. I finished. What about the Porter merger they're counting on? James Porter's company isn't in much better shape. The merger would be like tying 2 stones together and expecting them to float. I smiled, remembering James Porter's condescending comments at the wedding. The man who'd once thought himself worthy of arranging my marriage was now drowning in debt, his company hemorrhaging clients to my more efficient operations. "Send notices to all their major clients," I instructed. "It's time for Phoenix Maritime to raise its rates. Let's see how many stay loyal to outdated shipping methods when modern logistics could save them millions." Maya made a note, then hesitated. "There's something else. Your father has called an emergency board meeting for Wilson Shipping tomorrow morning." Finally, I've been waiting for this moment, carefully orchestrating it through a decade of strategic moves. Prepare the paperwork. It's time for Elena Martinez to make her first public appearance at Wilson Shipping. "Are you sure?" Maya's concern was evident. "Once you start this." "They buried their daughter to save face," I said quietly. "Now they'll learn exactly what that decision cost them." The next morning, I dressed with particular care. A blood-red Armani suit that projected power, Louboutin heels that clicked like weapons on marble floors, and a small gold compass pendant that had once belonged to my grandmother. The only Wilson who had truly loved me. The Wilson Shipping headquarters hadn't changed in 10 years. The same imposing granite building, the same brass nameplate declaring founded 1847. The same portrait of my great-grandfather glowering in the lobby. But there was an undercurrent of tension today. Nervous whispers and darting glances as employees noticed my arrival. "Ms. Martinez." The receptionist jumped to attention. "We weren't expecting. That is, the board meeting is private." "Not anymore." I handed her a thick envelope. "My credentials. As the majority shareholder of Phoenix Maritime and holder of significant Wilson Shipping debt, I have every right to attend." Her hands shook as she verified the paperwork. I watched her face pale as she realized exactly how much power Elena Martinez wielded. Of course. 14th floor boardroom. The elevator ride gave me a moment to center myself. In my ear, Maya's voice provided updates through a discreet earpiece. "All board members present. Your father's trying to push through an emergency restructuring plan. He still thinks he can save the company without outside help." The boardroom doors were heavy oak, stretching from floor to ceiling. I paused for a moment, hearing familiar voices through the wood. "Can't accept these terms," my father was saying. "Phoenix Maritime is trying to steal our company piece by piece." "We don't have a choice, George," another voice responded. "We're bleeding clients, our ships are outdated, and this mysterious Elena Martinez owns half the ports we use." I pushed the doors open. The conversation died instantly. 12 men in expensive suits stared at me. Old money, old power, old ideas. At the head of the table, my father stood frozen mid-gesture, his face darkening as he recognized the woman who'd attended his daughter's wedding. "Ms. Martinez," he managed finally. "This is a private meeting. Not anymore." I strode to the table, my heels echoing in the silence. "Please don't let me interrupt your discussion of my company's terms." "Your company?" He spat the words. "Phoenix Maritime is nothing but an upstart using digital gimmicks to steal established clients. Wilson Shipping has survived for 6 generations, and will survive for precisely 12 more days." I cut in smoothly. "Unless you accept the merger terms I'm about to offer." I placed a folder on the table. Inside was the culmination of 10 years' work. Documents proving my ownership of their buildings, their warehouses, their homes. Evidence of their mounting debts, their failed modernization attempts, their desperate efforts to maintain appearances while their empire crumbled. "This is impossible," my father whispered, flipping through pages. "These properties, our house, the hotel chain, all belong to me," I confirmed, "along with controlling interest in most of your remaining clients' companies. Face it, Mr. Wilson, you're not just losing, you've already lost." He slammed the folder down. "Who are you? Some tech billionaire trying to dismantle a legacy business. You have no idea what family tradition means." I felt my carefully constructed mask crack, just a little. Family tradition. I took off my designer sunglasses, meeting his eyes directly. Like the tradition of forcing your children into loveless marriages, or the tradition of declaring them dead when they refuse to comply. The color drained from his face. "No," he whispered. "It's not possible." Elena, one of the older board members, breathed, recognition dawning. "My God, Elena Wilson." I smiled, not pleasantly. "Elena Martinez, actually. I took the name after you killed me. Makes for a better corporate image than being the dead daughter of a failing shipping magnate." Chaos erupted in the boardroom. Board members shouted questions. My father stumbled back into his chair, and somewhere in the building, an emergency alarm began to wail. "Enough." My voice cut through the noise like a whip. "You have exactly 24 hours to accept the merger proposal. If you refuse, I call in all outstanding debts and sell your remaining assets to my subsidiaries. Your choice." I turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Oh, and father, you might want to check on mother. I hear she's still recovering from quite a spectacle at Olivia's wedding." Security guards burst in as I walked out, responding to some panic button my father had probably pressed. I smiled at them as I passed. They worked for me too, though they didn't know it yet. In the elevator, Maya's voice came through my earpiece. "Well, that was dramatic." "They always love theatrics," I replied. "I learned from the best. Your mother's waiting in the lobby." I stiffened. "What?" "She arrived about 5 minutes ago. Looks like she's mostly recovered from the champagne." The elevator doors opened and there she was. Margaret Wilson, Boston society matron. Perfectly coiffed even in the middle of her world collapsing. She stood near the great-grandfather's portrait, and for a moment I saw myself at 18, standing in that same spot while she lectured me about family duty. "Ms. Martinez," she said as I approached, her voice brittle as frozen glass. Or should I say, "Elena will do." I cut her off. "But only in private. Publicly, I'm still very much dead. Your choice, as I recall." She flinched. "We did what we had to do. For the family name." "The family name?" I laughed, the sound echoing off marble walls. "Take a look around, mother. The Wilson name isn't worth the brass it's engraved on. The only thing keeping this company afloat is my money, which makes it my name on the line. You're enjoying this," she accused, "destroying everything we built." "No," I stepped closer, close enough to smell her familiar perfume. "I'm saving everything you destroyed. The company will survive, modernize, grow. The Wilson name will continue, just not in Wilson hands." Her perfectly painted lips trembled. We really thought you were dead, poverty-stricken, failed," I supplied. "You thought your rebellious daughter couldn't possibly succeed without the family's help. That's why you erased me, because the alternative was admitting you might be wrong." A tear slipped down her cheek, carving a path through expensive foundation. "Elena, please. We can fix this. Come home." I'm not that naive girl anymore. I walked past her toward the entrance. "You have 24 hours to accept the merger. Don't worry, I'll let you keep the house. Consider it a wedding gift to Olivia." Outside, my driver held the car door. Boston's summer sun felt warm on my face, so different from the artificial chill of the Wilson building. I looked back once, seeing my mother's silhouette through the glass doors, small and lost in the lobby of her crumbling empire. Maya was waiting in the car. "Phase 2 complete," she reported. "The board is in chaos, our lawyers are standing by, and rumors already spreading through the financial district. What's our next move?" I checked my phone, seeing dozens of missed calls from my father, from board members, from family friends suddenly realizing who Elena Martinez really was. Let them talk. Let them panic. The next 24 hours would determine the fate of everything they built, and everything I'd built to replace it. Now, I said, we wait, and then we show them exactly what the dead daughter can do. The next phase would change everything. But that's another part of the story. The 24 hours I'd given the Wilson Shipping Board felt like the longest of my life. I spent them in my penthouse office, watching the sun set and rise again over Boston Harbor while my phone lit up with increasingly desperate messages. From my father, "We need to talk. This isn't the way." From various board members, "Let's discuss terms privately." From family friends, "Elena, darling, we never believed." From Olivia, surprisingly, "Is it really you?" I answered none of them. Instead, I focused on the final pieces of my plan, making sure every detail was perfect. The media had already caught wind of the story. Boston's supposedly dead heiress returning as a billionaire CEO to take over her family's company. The headlines wrote themselves. The Wall Street Journal is on line 1, Maya announced, entering with fresh coffee. They want an exclusive. Not yet. I took the coffee, breathing in its familiar comfort. Let them speculate for now. The real story comes after the board's decision. And if they refuse the merger? I smiled, remembering my mother's face in the lobby. They won't. Right on cue, my phone buzzed with a message from the board's secretary. The vote was in. Unanimous acceptance of Phoenix Maritime's merger terms. My father hadn't even voted against it. Perhaps he finally recognized the inevitable. Set up the press conference, I told Maya. 2 hours, main lobby of Wilson Shipping. Tell them Elena Martinez will be making a major announcement. And Elena Wilson. I touched the compass pendant at my neck, thinking of my grandmother. She's done hiding. The lobby was packed by the time I arrived. Reporters jostled for position, cameras flashed, and a crowd of Wilson Shipping employees lined the balconies above. My father stood with the board members on a small stage, looking like he aged a decade overnight. I made them wait 10 minutes, a small petty pleasure, but I'd earned it. When I finally walked in, the crowd fell silent. I wore Wilson blue today, a power suit that matched the company's logo, with my grandmother's compass catching the light. No more hiding behind sunglasses or Spanish accents. "Thank you all for coming," I began, stepping to the podium. "My name is Elena Martinez, or, as some of you might remember, Elena Wilson." The room erupted. Cameras clicked frantically, reporters shouted questions, and somewhere in the crowd, I heard my mother gasp. I held up a hand for silence. 10 years ago, the Wilson family announced my tragic death, a sailing accident off the coast. The truth is somewhat less dramatic. I simply refused an arranged marriage and left to build my own life. My parents, finding this embarrassing, chose to bury an empty casket rather than admit their daughter had defied them. My father stepped forward, face dark with anger, but security, my security, held him back. In the decades since, I continued, I built what they said was impossible. Phoenix Maritime revolutionized shipping logistics, embracing modern technology while companies like Wilson Shipping clung to outdated methods. We grew rapidly, acquiring ports, properties, and clients, including many former Wilson assets. I turned to face the board members directly. Today, I'm announcing the merger of Wilson Shipping with Phoenix Maritime. The Wilson name will continue, but the company will be completely restructured. All current board members will be retiring with generous compensation packages. More chaos, more shouted questions. I noticed Olivia slip into the back of the room, still in her honeymoon tan, watching with wide eyes. "And now," I said, "I'll take questions. Ms. Wilson, did your family know you were alive?" "No, they were quite committed to my death." "Ms. Martinez, how did you build your empire?" "The same way I would have modernized Wilson Shipping, had I been allowed, by understanding that tradition without innovation is just slow decay." "Mr. Wilson, your response to your daughter's return?" My father stepped forward, and for a moment I saw something crack in his proud facade. "Elena, we thought. You thought I'd fail," I finished for him. "That's the problem, father. You never saw who I really was." He aged another decade before my eyes. "We did what we thought was right." "No," I corrected quietly. "You did what was easy. Erasing you was easier than admitting I might have had better ideas. Declaring me dead was easier than explaining why I left. Even now, giving up control is easier than watching your company collapse under its own weight." "Elena," my mother's voice, somewhere in the crowd. "Please." I ignored her, addressing the reporters again. "The merged company will retain the Wilson name out of respect for its history. But make no mistake, this is a complete transformation. We're moving into the future, whether the old guard likes it or not. More questions flew, but my attention was caught by Olivia pushing through the crowd. She looked different from the polished bride of 2 days ago, younger somehow, more like the sister I remembered. You were there, she said, reaching the stage. At my wedding. You watched us all. Pretend to mourn me. I raised an eyebrow. Yes. I knew. Her voice dropped so only I could hear. Sometimes I'd look at old pictures and think I saw you in the background. At charity events, business functions, I thought I was going crazy. You aren't. Why didn't you tell me? Back then, when they first. Would you have kept my secret? I studied her face, seeing the answer. No, you were always their perfect daughter. The one who'd never disobey. She flinched. I was 12. Old enough to know right from wrong. I softened slightly, seeing real pain in her eyes. But young enough to be afraid of ending up like me. A tear slipped down her cheek. I missed you. The real you, not the sanitized dead sister they talked about at parties. For the first time, I felt my own composure crack. I missed you too. But I couldn't be who they wanted. I had to be myself. Ms. Martinez. A reporter's shout broke the moment. What happens to the Wilson family now? I turned back to the crowd, professional mask firmly in place. They'll retain their personal assets, those that aren't already legally mine, and receive fair compensation for their shares. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here to save a company that lost its way. And the family relationships. I looked at my father, defeated on his stage, my mother crying quietly in the crowd. Olivia, torn between the sister she'd lost and the parents she'd chosen. Some things, I said quietly, can be fixed with money or business deals. The Wilsons declared their daughter dead rather than accept her choices. That doesn't go away just because she came back successful. The press conference wound down after that. Reporters got their sound bites, photographers got their shots of the prodigal daughter triumphant, and gradually the crowd dispersed. I stayed on stage, watching my parents huddle with their lawyers while Olivia hovered uncertainly between us. Maya appeared at my elbow. The papers are ready to sign. Private conference room. I nodded. Give me a minute. When the lobby was almost empty, I walked to where my parents stood. Up close, they looked old and tired, nothing like the towering figures of my childhood. The lawyers will explain everything, I said professionally. You'll be comfortable. The house is yours for life, the vacation properties too. I'm not interested in leaving you destitute. Just powerless, my father said bitterly. Like you left me? I smiled without warmth. The difference is, I'm giving you a choice. Sign the papers, accept a comfortable retirement, maybe even try to rebuild something resembling a real family relationship. Or fight me, lose everything, and prove that pride really is more important than blood. My mother reached for my hand. I let her take it, feeling her expensive rings press into my palm. We thought we were protecting you, she whispered. The business world, it's so hard for women. I pulled away. I know exactly how hard it is. I succeeded not because of the Wilson name, but because you forced me to fight without it. Olivia stepped forward. Elena, what about me? You're my sister, I said simply. My door is open when you're ready to know me as I am, not who they wanted me to be. I turned to go, then paused. Oh, and mother, the next time you're drunk at a party in my hotel, try not to brag about how you erased your daughter. It's bad for both our reputations. The paperwork took less than an hour. Signatures were scratched, hands were shaken, and just like that, Wilson Shipping belonged to the daughter they'd buried. The company would keep its name but nothing else. New board, new methods, new future. Later that night, I stood in my office watching the Wilson ships in the harbor. Soon they'd be repainted with the Phoenix Maritime logo, upgraded with modern technology, integrated into my larger transportation network. The Wilson legacy would live on, just not in the way my parents had imagined. Maya brought a bottle of champagne. To the merger. To the truth, I corrected, taking a glass. Sometimes it takes a death to bring it to life. Your sister's been calling, she said carefully, and your grandmother's compass. I touched the pendant. Grandma knew. She left me this compass the day before I disappeared, said sometimes the right path isn't the easy one. Smart woman. She would have loved seeing this. I sipped the champagne, remembering. She always said the Wilson pride would sink us faster than any storm. My phone buzzed. Olivia again. This time I answered. Can we talk? She asked quietly, Really talked, just us? I looked out at the harbor where the Wilson ships floated in darkness. Come over. It's time you saw who your sister really is. After I hung up, I asked Maya to order dinner for two. It would be a long night of explanations, of bridging the gap between the sister who died and the woman who rose from those ashes. But maybe, just maybe, something good could come from all this. I wasn't Alana Wilson anymore. That girl had died exactly as her parents claimed. But Elena Martinez was stronger, successful beyond their wildest fears, and finally, absolutely free. The merger would save their company. The money would save their lifestyle. But the truth, that would save me. And in the end, that's what the story was really about. Not revenge, not money, not even family. It was about a girl who had to die to become who she was always meant to be. I raised my glass to the dark harbor. To Alana Wilson, I whispered, "May she rest in peace." Then I turned away from the window and went to meet my sister, ready to begin whatever came next.
The day my father died, I was in his office reviewing quarterly projections for Sterling Innovation's new medical device division. Numbers had always been my sanctuary, clean, precise, unchangeable. Unlike people, spreadsheets never lied or played favorites. Mr. Sterling wants to see the Q3 estimates, his secretary, Martha, said, poking her head in. She'd been calling him Mr. Sterling instead of your father since my first day at the company. Professionalism, she'd explained, was everything. Almost done, I replied, double-checking my calculations. The medical division was my baby, a project I'd spent 3 years developing. The projections looked promising, a 40% growth rate, conservative estimates showing potential revenue of $50 million by year's end. I never got to show him those numbers. The heart attack hit during his afternoon tennis match. By the time I reached the hospital, Sarah had already arrived, designer heels clicking against sterile tiles as she paced the waiting room. My sister always did have perfect timing. Finally decided to show up. She snapped, barely glancing at me. "Where were you?" "Working," I said quietly. "At the office, where you haven't been in months." She waved her hand dismissively. "Some of us have lives outside that dusty building, Madison." That dusty building was Sterling Innovation's headquarters, the company our grandfather had founded and our father had built into a billion-dollar enterprise. Sarah treated it like a trust fund, showing up for board meetings and important client dinners, but leaving the actual work to others, mainly to me. The doctor's arrival cut short our brewing argument. His expression told us everything before he spoke a word. "I'm very sorry," he began, and the world tilted sideways. The next few days passed in a blur of funeral arrangements, condolence calls, and board meetings. I handled most of it, working through my grief the only way I knew how, by keeping busy. Sarah spent her time entertaining relatives and giving tearful interviews to business magazines about carrying on our father's legacy. The will reading was scheduled for a week after the funeral. I sat in our family lawyer's office, the same leather chair I'd occupied during countless childhood visits with Dad. Mr. Patterson, who'd handled Sterling legal affairs for 30 years, looked uncomfortable as he shuffled his papers. "As you know," he began, "your father updated his will recently, just 2 months ago, in fact." I nodded. Dad had mentioned wanting to get his affairs in order, though he'd seemed healthy as ever. "The bulk of his personal estate will be divided equally between you both," Mr. Patterson continued. "The house, investments, art collection, all split 50-50. Sarah smiled, probably already mentally redecorating the Manhattan penthouse. However, the lawyer cleared his throat regarding Sterling Innovations. My heart stopped. Dad and I had discussed this just last month, We talked about my 5-year plan for the company over dinner. He'd seemed excited about my vision for expanding the medical division, even proud. Control of the company, including the position of CEO and chairperson of the board, will pass to Sarah Sterling. The words hit like physical blows. Sarah's triumphant gasp barely registered through the roaring in my ears. There must be some mistake, I managed. Dad and we had plans. The medical division is specifically addressed. Mr. Patterson cut in gently. Your father left instructions that all current projects should be reviewed by the new CEO for viability. Sarah's smile turned predatory. Don't worry, little sister. I'll give your pet project all the attention it deserves. I sat there numb as Mr. Patterson continued reading. The details washed over me. Voting shares, board positions, corporate structure. All I could think about was Dad's voice during our last dinner. The medical division could change lives, Madison. It's exactly the kind of innovation Sterling needs. Had it all been lies? The next morning, I arrived at the office early. As usual, my security badge still worked, though I wondered how long that would last. The medical division team was waiting for my morning briefing. 15 brilliant engineers and researchers who trusted my vision. I heard about the will reading, Martha said softly as I passed her desk. I'm so sorry, Madison. I managed a weak smile. Thanks, Martha. Has she arrived yet? 3rd floor. Moving into the executive office already. Of course she was. Sarah never wasted time claiming what she thought was hers. I made it through the briefing somehow, focusing on technical details and development timelines. My team knew something was wrong, but they were kind enough not to ask. These people had followed me, believed in me. What would happen to them now? The answer came sooner than expected. Madison. Sarah's voice cut through the quiet hum of the engineering floor. She stood in the doorway of our research lab, looking absurdly out of place in her camel suit. We need to talk. I followed her to what had been Dad's office. She'd already replaced his degrees and family photos with modern art pieces. His old leather chair, worn from years of late nights and important decisions, was gone, replaced by something sleek and strong. I've been reviewing the numbers, she said, perching on her new throne. The medical division is hemorrhaging money. It's a development phase, I explained, fighting to keep my voice steady. The projections show whatever you want them to show. She tossed a folder onto the desk, my carefully prepared reports. This isn't what Sterling Innovations needs right now. We're streamlining operations, focusing on our core business. Core business? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Dad always said innovation was our core business. It's literally in our name. Dad isn't here anymore. Sarah's voice turned cold, and frankly, neither should you be. I stared at her, this stranger wearing my sister's face. What are you saying? I'm saying you're fired, Madison. Clear out your office by the end of the day. Security will escort you out. The world seemed to stop. You can't do this. I built that division from nothing. Those people trust me. Those people, she cut in, work for Sterling Innovations, my company now. And you? She smiled, the same smile she'd used when stealing my toys as children. You're worthless to this company. Always have been, really. Playing with your little projects while I learned how business really works. By partying with board members and kissing up to investors. I shot back. When's the last time you actually developed anything? Development is for employees, she said dismissively. Leadership is about vision, and my vision doesn't include you. I stood there, hands shaking, as decades of competition and resentment crystallized into this moment. Dad believed in me, I said quietly. Dad pitied you, Sarah replied. Why do you think he left me in charge? Now get out of my office before I call security. I walked out with my head high, past Martha's tearful face, past my confused team members, past the security guard who'd known me since I was a child. One box of personal items, family photos, engineering awards, the prototype of my first patented device. A life's work reduced to a cardboard box. My phone buzzed as I reached my car. A message from an unknown number. Meet me at Joe's Diner tomorrow, 3 p.m. Come alone. There's something you need to know about your father's safe. I stared at the message, wondering if grief was making me hallucinate. Dad's safe. The old one in his home office? Sarah would have cleaned that out already, along with everything else. But what did I have to lose? Little did I know, that message would change everything. But first, I had to survive the longest night of my life, alone with the knowledge that I'd lost not just my father, but my life's work and my last connection to the company he built. I drove home in a daze, the box of memories beside me, feeling both too heavy and too light. Tomorrow would bring answers, or more questions. For now, all I could do was wonder, what secret could be worth all this pain? Joe's Diner sat on the corner of 5th and Pine, a relic from a time before sterling innovations dominated the city skyline. Dad used to bring me here for chocolate milkshakes after school, before board meetings became more important than father-daughter time. I arrived early, sliding into a worn leather booth with a clear view of both entrances. Old habits die hard. Dad always said a good executive watches their exits. At exactly 3 p.m., Martha walked in. You? I straightened in surprise. Dad's secretary. No, Sarah's secretary now. Looked different outside the office. More determined, less deferential. Your father knew this day might come, she said, sitting across from me. He made me promise to wait until the right moment. What moment? She pulled an envelope from her bag. The moment your sister showed her true colors. Inside the envelope was a single key and a handwritten note in Dad's familiar scrawl. West Wall, behind the Monet. December 14, 1989. Dad's old safe. I breathed. But Sarah must have opened it already. Martha smiled. That's what she thinks. Your father had 2 safes in his study. The obvious one, behind his desk. That's where he kept standard documents, things he expected people to find. But the real safe, his private safe. She tapped the key. Only 3 people knew about it. Him, me, and now you. Why you? Because I've been more than just a secretary for 30 years, Madison. I was your father's most trusted confidant. I knew things about sterling innovations that even the board doesn't know. My mind raced. December 14, 1989. Why was that date familiar? The day Sterling Innovations went public, Martha supplied, reading my expression. Also the day your mother left. The memory hit hard. I was 6, Sarah 10. Mom walked out during Dad's IPO celebration, leaving nothing but a note and a lifetime of trust issues. What's in the safe? I don't know, Martha admitted. But your father said if anything happened to him, if Sarah ever tried to push you out, I should make sure you found it. She glanced at her watch. Sarah's in board meetings all afternoon. The house will be empty. I gripped the key tightly. Why are you helping me? Because I watched you grow up in that company. While Sarah was partying through college, You were interning in the labs. When she was dating board members' sons, you were filing patents. You are your father's daughter, Madison. His true heir. She stood up. The company needs you. More than anyone knows. 20 minutes later, I let myself into my childhood home. Everything felt different, colder somehow, as if Sarah's presence had already begun erasing decades of memories. The study was exactly as Dad had left it, probably the only room Sarah hadn't changed yet. The Monet, an original, worth millions, hung innocently on the west wall. With trembling fingers, I lifted it. There, almost invisible against the wood paneling, was a seam. The key fit perfectly. Inside the wall safe were 3 items: a thick manila envelope, a USB drive, and a smaller envelope with Sarah's name on it. I opened the manila envelope first. Inside was a detailed report from a private investigator, dated 6 months ago. My hands shook as I read. Subject: Sarah Sterling investigation confirms systematic embezzlement from Sterling Innovations Medical Research Fund. Estimated total, $28.7 million. Funds traced to offshore accounts and real estate purchases under alias Jennifer Blake. Photos spilled out. Sarah meeting with shady lawyers. Documents showing money transfers. Property deeds in the Cayman Islands. The USB drive contained something even more damaging. Video recordings of Sarah selling Sterling trade secrets to competitors. She'd been sabotaging the company from within for years. But it was the letter with her name that explained everything. Dad's final message to his eldest daughter. Sarah, by the time you read this, you'll think you've won. The company will be yours, just as you always wanted. You'll believe I chose you over Madison. You're wrong. I've known about the embezzlement for months. The traded secrets, the offshore accounts. All of it. I gave you chances to come clean, to prove you could change. You failed every test. The will you think gives you control? It's a trap. The real transfer of power was executed months ago. Everything, the voting shares, operational control, even my board seat, was legally transferred to Madison through a series of blind trusts, your CEO in name only. The moment you open this safe, those trusts activate. Madison becomes majority shareholder and true CEO of Sterling Innovations. I loved you, Sarah, but I had to protect the company. More importantly, I had to protect your sister from you. The choice is yours now. Resign quietly, return the stolen funds, or face criminal charges. Madison will know what to do. Dad. My phone buzzed. A text from Martha. The board meeting just ended. Sarah's headed to the house. I quickly photographed everything, then replaced it exactly as I'd found it. The front door opened just as I rehung the Monet. What are you doing here? Sarah's voice cracked like a whip. I turned slowly, saying goodbye to Dad's office, since you'll probably redecorate this room too. Get out before I call the police. I walked past her, pausing in the doorway. You should check Dad's safe, by the way. The real one, behind the Monet. Interesting reading material. Her face paled. What are you talking about? Ask Martha for the key. Or better yet, ask her about December 14, 1989. I smiled. Goodbye, Sarah. See you at tomorrow's board meeting. I heard her heels clicking frantically across the floor as I left, knowing she'd find exactly what Dad wanted her to find. In my car, I pulled out my phone and dialed the number for Sterling Innovations' head of security. Jack. Madison Sterling. I need you to lock down all company servers immediately. authorization code Victor Echo 9, and put a hold on any transfers from our research accounts. Yes, Miss Sterling, he replied without hesitation. Dad's loyal people were still in place, just as he planned. Next, I called our family lawyer. Mr. Patterson, it's time to execute the Phoenix Protocol. Are you sure? He asked. Once we activate those trusts, there's no going back. I thought about Sarah's face when she fired me, about the years of sabotage, about Dad's final act of protection. I'm sure. My sister needs to learn that some safes hold more than just secrets. They hold justice. Tomorrow would bring chaos, board meetings, legal challenges, perhaps even criminal charges. But for now, I smiled, knowing Dad had outplayed us all. The medical division would survive. Sterling Innovations would thrive. And Sarah? She was about to learn what Dad always taught me. In business, as in life, the truth will always come out. All it takes is the right key, the right safe, and the right moment. The Sterling Innovations boardroom had always reminded me of a gladiator arena. 24 stories up, floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city our family had helped build, and a massive oval table where corporate warriors fought their battles. I arrived early, watching the sunrise paint the skyline in shades of gold. Martha had already prepared the room, folders at each seat, coffee service arranged precisely, blinds adjusted to minimize glare. The little details that make big moments work. Security reports Sarah arrived at 5 a.m., Martha said, setting a cup of green tea at my usual spot. She's been in her office making calls all morning. I nodded, picturing my sister's desperation. Any transfers get through? No. The accounts are frozen, just as you ordered. Though she tried, 17 attempts to move funds offshore since midnight. And the board members? All confirmed attending, including Thomas Y. That was crucial. Thomas Y., our largest independent shareholder, had been Sarah's strongest supporter. His vote could swing the entire board. By 8:55 a.m., they began filing in. Board members, legal counsel, even a few shareholders who'd earned the right to attend. Many double-took at my presence, but no one dared comment. The tension in the room could have powered the building. Sarah arrived last, naturally. She'd changed clothes since yesterday. Armani power suit, killer heels, war paint perfect. But her eyes gave her away. They darted around the room like a cornered animal's, finally fixing on me with pure hatred. "What is she doing here?" she demanded. "Waiting for you to begin the meeting," I replied calmly. "There are some interesting items on today's agenda. You're not on the board anymore. Security." "Actually," Mr. Patterson spoke up from his corner, "Ms. Madison Sterling's presence is required for today's proceedings." He began distributing additional folders. "If everyone could please review the documents before you." Sarah snatched her copy, face growing paler with each page she turned. The room filled with murmurs as others did the same. "This is impossible," she finally spluttered. "These trusts, they can't be legal." "Oh, but they are," I said, standing. "Every transfer, every document, every signature verified and notarized." Dad was very thorough. "Dad was dying," she snapped. "He wasn't thinking clearly." "Actually," Martha stepped forward, "Mr. Sterling began planning this 18 months ago when he first suspected the embezzlement." The room went dead silent. "What embezzlement?" Thomas Y. asked sharply. I nodded to Martha, who activated the presentation screen. Evidence began filling the display. Bank transfers, property records, emails between Sarah and our competitors. $28 million, I announced to the stunned room. Stolen from our medical research division. Our father's private investigation confirmed it all. Lies. Sarah slammed her hands on the table. This is a desperate attempt to what, Sarah? To protect the company? To stop you from selling our trade secrets? I pulled out my phone. Should I play the videos Dad collected? The ones showing you meeting with our competitors? She lunged for the phone, but security was faster. 2 guards materialized beside her, firm but professional. Miss Sterling, the head of security addressed Sarah. We need you to remain seated. This is my company, she shrieked. I am the CEO. No, I said quietly. You're not. You never were. The will was a test. Dad's final chance for you to prove you could change. Instead, you showed exactly why. He couldn't trust you with his legacy. Thomas Way stood up. I move for an immediate vote of no confidence in Sarah Sterling's leadership. Seconded, another board member quickly added. You can't do this. Sarah's voice cracked. Daddy gave me the company. Dad gave you a choice. I corrected. Return the stolen funds and resign quietly, or face criminal charges. Time to choose, sister. She looked around the room, finding no allies in the faces surrounding her. All these people she charmed and manipulated over the years. Now they saw her true nature. Fine, she spat. You want the money back. Take it. But don't think this means you've won. I'll fight this in court. You'll what? I interrupted. Reveal how you embezzled millions? How you sold company secrets? How you fired the legitimate CEO hours after Dad's funeral? I shook my head. Think carefully about your next move, Sarah. Prison jumpsuits come in designer orange these days. Mr. Patterson cleared his throat. There is another option. One your father prepared. He slid a document across the table. Sarah's hands shook as she read it. A full confession in exchange for immunity from prosecution, I explained. Sign it, return every penny you stole, and you can walk away. Keep a small trust fund, even. Enough to live comfortably, if not extravagantly. And if I refuse? Then I'd press charges. The evidence goes to the SEC, the FBI, and every news outlet in the country. The great Sarah Sterling, brought down by her own greed. Tears smeared her perfect makeup as she stared at the document. For a moment, I saw past the designer armor to the sister I'd once admired, once loved. Was any of it real? I asked softly. Did you ever actually care about the company? About Dad's legacy? I cared about winning, she whispered. That's what Dad taught us, wasn't it? Win at all costs? No, I shook my head. That's what you chose to learn. Dad taught us to innovate, to build, to make things better. You just couldn't see past your own reflection. She picked up the pen, hand trembling slightly. You think you're so perfect, have you? Daddy's real hair? The true Sterling? No, Sarah. I just think I'm the sister who didn't betray everything our family built. The scratch of her signature echoed in the silent room. As soon as she finished, security stepped forward. Please escort Ms. Sarah Sterling from the building, I instructed. Her credentials have already been deactivated. She stood, straightening her designer jacket one last time. Congratulations, little sister. You finally won. This was never about winning, Sarah. It was about protecting what Dad created, what we were supposed to protect together. As the doors closed behind her, Thomas Weiss spoke up. I moved to formally recognize Madison Sterling as CEO and chairperson of Sterling Innovations, effective immediately. The vote was unanimous. Hours later, after the press releases were drafted, the employees notified, and the initial shockwaves had subsided, I stood in Dad's old office, my office now. Martha brought in a box I'd requested from storage. "Are you sure about this?" she asked as I pulled out the old leather chair, Dad's chair, the one Sarah had discarded. "Some things shouldn't change," I said, running my hand over the worn leather. "Some legacies deserve to be preserved." I sat down, feeling the weight of responsibility settle around me. On the desk, Dad's old photo still stood, all of us together, before Mom left, before Sarah's ambition poisoned everything, before money and power tore our family apart. "Your father would be proud," Martha said softly. "He knew, didn't he? All along, he knew it would end this way." She smiled. "He knew his daughters, both of them. The one who saw the company as a prize to be won, and the one who saw it as a responsibility to be earned." I picked up the medical division reports, my division, the one Sarah had tried to destroy. The numbers still looked promising. With the stolen funds returned, we could accelerate development, help more people, build something truly meaningful. "Martha," I called as she turned to leave. "Thank you for everything." "Just doing my job, Miss Sterling." "Madison," I corrected. "After 30 years of keeping my father's secrets, I think you've earned first-name privileges." She nodded, eyes glistening slightly. "Welcome home, Madison." That evening, I worked late, just as Dad used to. The city lights twinkled below, each one representing a life, a story, a potential customer or employee or partner. Sterling Innovations didn't belong to Sarah or me. It belonged to all of them. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Sarah, you'll regret this. Family should come first." I typed back, "It did. That's why Dad chose me." Then I blocked her number, turned back to my work, and began planning the future of Sterling Innovations. Not as the sister who won, but as the daughter who understood what winning really meant. Sometimes a safe holds more than secrets. Sometimes it holds the truth about who we really are. And sometimes, just sometimes, justice comes with a key, a note, and a father's final lesson about love, trust, and the true meaning of family legacy. The day I discovered what true betrayal felt like, I was sitting at our mahogany dining table, surrounded by college acceptance letters. Harvard, Stanford, MIT. Their prestigious letterheads scattered before me like fallen leaves. My hands trembled as I held the latest one from Princeton, their words of congratulation blurring through my tears. "Mom, Dad, I got in. I got into Princeton." My voice echoed through our sprawling Victorian home, a house that had witnessed 3 generations of the Montgomery family's success. My mother's heels clicked against the hardwood floors as she approached, her face bearing an expression I couldn't quite read. Behind her, my father's heavy footsteps followed, his usual confident stride somehow hesitant. "That's wonderful, Catherine," my mother said, but her tone carried none of the excitement I'd expected. She exchanged a glance with my father, who cleared his throat and loosened his silk tie. "Sit down, Kathy. We need to talk." I sank back into my chair, the acceptance letter still clutched in my hands. Something in their demeanor made my stomach twist into knots. "Your brother William," my father began, "his tech startup is showing incredible promise. The prototype he's developed could revolutionize renewable energy storage." He paused, adjusting his glasses. but he needs significant funding to take it to the next level. My mother stepped forward, our manicured fingers trailing along the table's edge. We've decided to invest in his company. It's a remarkable opportunity, one that could secure the family's future for generations. That's great, I said, though uncertainty crept into my voice. But what about my college tuition? The fund you've been saving since I was born. The silence that followed felt like a physical weight pressing against my chest. Catherine, my father said firmly, using my full name. Never a good sign. We've made the decision to use your college fund to support William's venture. It's what's best for the family. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. What? But that was my money. You promised. Don't be selfish, Catherine, my mother cut in sharply. William's project could be worth millions. You can take out student loans like other people do, or maybe consider a local community college for a few years. I stared at them, these people who had raised me, who had always preached about the importance of education, who had spent years encouraging my dreams of attending an Ivy League school. Now they stood before me, calmly destroying those dreams to favor my brother. Again. William had always been their golden child. 4 years older than me, he dropped out of college to pursue his entrepreneurial dreams. While I spent my high school years maintaining a perfect GPA, serving as class president, and winning national science competitions, William bounced from one failed startup to another, each time convincing our parents to invest just a little more. How much? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. What? My father frowned. How much of my college fund did you give him? My mother shifted uncomfortably. All of it. The full $289,000. The number hit me like a physical blow. Nearly $300,000. Gone. Every birthday check from grandparents, every summer job earning, every penny saved for my future, handed over to William without a second thought. I stood up so abruptly my chair toppled backward. Did you even consider asking me? It's my money. Catherine Elizabeth Montgomery. My father's voice boomed through the dining room. That is enough. This decision is final. William's project needs this investment, and as part of this family, you need to support what's best for everyone. Best for everyone? I laughed, but it came out more like a sob. Or best for William? Your brother has vision, my mother said defensively. He sees opportunities others can't. Sometimes that means taking risks. Risks with my future. I shouted, surprising even myself with the volume. What about my vision? My opportunities? My father's face hardened. If you can't understand the importance of supporting your family's interests, perhaps you're not as mature as we thought. Go to your room until you can discuss this rationally. I stood there, 18 years old, being sent to my room like a child for daring to object to having my future stolen. In that moment, something inside me shifted. A fundamental change in how I saw my family, my place in it, and what I needed to do next. Without another word, I turned and walked upstairs to my room. But instead of collapsing on my bed to cry, as they probably expected, I pulled out my largest backpack and began to pack. Essential clothes, my laptop, the emergency credit card I'd never used, and most importantly, my documents, birth certificate, social security card, passport. My hands moved methodically, my mind surprisingly clear despite the chaos of emotions swirling inside me. From my sock drawer, I retrieved the $200 I'd saved from my last tutoring sessions. Money I hadn't added to my college fund because I'd planned to use it for Princeton merchandise once I got in. Now it would serve a different purpose. As I packed, memories flooded through my mind. William's first failed startup, a social media platform for pets that burned through $50,000 our parents' money. His second attempt, a cryptocurrency that lasted 3 months before collapsing. Each failure met with encouragement, support, and more funding, while I was told to be practical about my dreams. The sound of the doorbell interrupted my thoughts. Through my window, I saw William's Tesla pulling into the driveway. Of course he was here, probably coming to collect his latest handout. I could hear their voices drifting up from below. William's charismatic laugh, my mother's adoring tone, my father's proud rumble. The perfect family moment, complete with their perfect son and his perfect excuses for needing more money. Opening my laptop one last time, I wrote 2 emails. The first to Princeton. Dear Admissions Committee, with deep regret, I must decline your offer of admission. Due to unexpected financial circumstances, I will be unable to attend Princeton University this fall. Thank you for the opportunity. Sincerely, Catherine Montgomery. The second email went to my parents. Mom and Dad, you've made your choice, and now I'm making mine. Don't look for me. Don't try to contact me. I'll find my own way without the family money or the family name. Catherine. I hit send, then removed the battery from my phone. From downstairs, I could hear William launching into another enthusiastic pitch about his revolutionary technology. In his world of dreams and schemes, $289,000 was probably just another number, just another stepping stone to his imagined success. But for me, it was the last straw. Slinging my backpack over my shoulder, I took one final look at my room, at the debate team trophies, the science fair medals, the honor roll certificates, all evidence of a life spent trying to earn the approval of parents who would always choose William first. I climbed down the trellis outside my window, something I hadn't done since I was 14. My feet hit the ground softly, and without looking back, I walked away from the Montgomery family estate. In my pocket was $200. In my head was a lifetime of straight A's and academic achievements. And in my heart was a burning determination to prove that they had made the biggest mistake of their lives. I didn't know then that 10 years later, I would be sitting across from them in a corporate boardroom, watching them pitch their failing company to potential investors, not realizing that their last hope for salvation was the daughter they had dismissed so easily. But that part of the story would come later. First, I had to build something from nothing. First, I had to become someone they would never expect their practical daughter to be. With each step away from my childhood home, my resolve strengthened. They wanted to bet everything on William. Fine. I would bet everything on myself. And I wouldn't need their $289,000 to do it. The first night of freedom tasted like cheap coffee and desperation. I sat in a 24-hour diner on the outskirts of Boston, my backpack tucked securely under my feet, watching my phone battery slowly die. Before it went dark completely, I saw 17 missed calls from my mother, 5 from my father, and 1 text from William. Don't be dramatic, Kathy. Come home. I ordered another coffee, spreading my remaining cash on the laminate table. $178.42. The bus ticket from Connecticut had taken a bigger bite than expected. More coffee, hun? The waitress, Maria, had kind eyes and wore a name tag with 5 gold stars. Thanks, I said, then hesitated. Are you hiring? She looked me over. Pristine college interview clothes, expensive laptop, the obvious signs of a privileged kid playing runaway. But something in my expression must have touched her because she didn't immediately dismiss me. Kitchen help, she said finally. 6 to 2, minimum wage plus tip split. Start tomorrow if you want. I nodded, relief flooding through me. I'll be here. There's a motel down the street, she added, scribbling on her order pad. Tell Jimmy that Maria sent you. He'll give you the weekly rate. That night, in a motel room that smelled of old cigarettes and cleaning supplies, I opened my laptop and began to plan. The Princeton acceptance letter was still in my bag, a reminder of the future I'd just lost. But as I stared at it, an idea began to form. I'd spent my high school years tutoring rich kids in advanced mathematics and sciences. Their parents paid premium rates for my services because I got results: perfect SAT scores, improved GPAs, early college admissions. I'd always seen it as a way to earn extra money for college. Now, I saw it as the foundation for something bigger. Opening a new document, I began to type: Elite Academic Consulting Specialized Tutoring and College Admissions Guidance founded by a Princeton-accepted scholar. I worked through the night, building a simple website using my coding skills from AP Computer Science. By dawn, I had created professional-looking business cards at an all-night print shop, spending $50 of my precious savings. The next 6 months fell into a grueling routine. From 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., I worked at the diner, learning every aspect of the business I could. Maria, it turned out, had owned the place for 20 years. She taught me about inventory management, staff scheduling, and most importantly, how to read people. From 3 p.m. to 9 p.m., I built my tutoring business. My first client came from a regular at the diner who overheard me helping Maria's daughter with calculus during my break. Word spread quickly among the wealthy suburbs of Boston. There was a young tutor who had gotten into Princeton, but chose to defer, who could explain complex concepts clearly, who guaranteed results. I never mentioned my real last name. Catherine Montgomery became Kate Morgan, and my clients never questioned it. They cared about results, not pedigree. By month 3, I was making enough from tutoring to quit the diner, though I still helped Maria with her books on weekends. She'd become something between a friend and a mentor, teaching me lessons about business that no Ivy League school could match. "You're good with numbers," she said one Sunday, watching me optimize her inventory system. "But you're better with people. That's where real money is made." She was right. My tutoring clients weren't just paying for academic help. They were paying for confidence, for hope, for a chance at the future their children dreamed of. It was something I understood intimately. One day, as I was reviewing a student's college essay, his mother made an offhand comment that would change everything. "If only you could clone yourself. Every parent in Boston would hire you." That night, I couldn't sleep. Clone myself? No, but I could scale. I reached out to other high-achieving students who had gotten into top colleges but chose to take gap years. Many were brilliant, but needed money, just like me. I offered them a proposition: work under my brand, use my methods, and earn 70% of the fees while I handled marketing and client acquisition. Within 2 months, Elite Academic Consulting had 10 tutors. Within 6 months, we had offices in Boston, New York, and Greenwich, Connecticut, though I carefully avoided any locations too close to my family's social circle. My first million came faster than I expected, earned through a combination of the tutoring business and strategic investments in tech stocks. I lived modestly, pouring every spare dollar into expansion. While William was probably still burning through my college fund on his latest venture, I was building something sustainable. But I knew tutoring was just the beginning. Through my wealthy clients, I began to hear whispers about investment opportunities, startups seeking funding, established companies looking for fresh perspectives. I listened, learned, and most importantly, I planned. The breakthrough came during a tutoring session with Emma Chen, daughter of tech mogul James Chen. As I helped her with advanced economics, I noticed the investment prospectus for his company, Chen Tech Solutions, lying open on his home office desk. "Dad's worried," Emma confided during our study break. "The new energy storage project is failing, but he's invested too much to back out now." Energy storage, just like William's supposed revolutionary technology. I spent that night researching Chen Tech's project, and by morning, I knew two things. First, their approach was fundamentally flawed, and second, I knew how to fix it. It took 3 weeks to get a meeting with James Chen, using every connection I'd built through my tutoring network. When I finally sat across from him in his corner office, he looked amused. "Miss Morgan," he said, "my daughter speaks highly of you. But what makes you think you understand energy storage technology?" I opened my laptop and began my presentation. 4 hours later, he wasn't smiling anymore. Instead, he was offering me a partnership. 30% stake, he said, if you can deliver what you're promising. I countered with 40% and full control of the technical development. He agreed. 6 months later, Chen Tech's new energy storage system was revolutionizing the industry. The technology that William had dreamed of creating, I had actually built, though under a different name and with a different company. My net worth jumped to 9 figures overnight. But I wasn't done. Using Chen Tech's success as a springboard, I began acquiring struggling tech companies, particularly in the energy sector. Each acquisition was done through shell companies and holding firms, always keeping the name Catherine Morgan separate from the growing business empire. I hired the best lawyers and accountants to create a labyrinth of corporations that all led back to Morgan Enterprises, my private holding company. To the outside world, Morgan Enterprises was run by a reclusive CEO who never gave interviews or appeared in public. Years passed. My empire grew. I moved from Boston to New York to Silicon Valley, always staying ahead of any chance encounters with my family. Through discreet sources, I kept tabs on them. William's string of failures continued, each one funded by my parents' dwindling resources. The Montgomery family fortune, built over generations, was being bowled dry by their blind faith in their son. Then one morning in my San Francisco penthouse office, my assistant brought me interesting news. "Montgomery Technologies is looking for investors," she said, placing the report on my desk. "They're on the verge of bankruptcy. Your father is meeting with potential buyers next week." I picked up the report, a smile playing at my lips. After 10 years, everything had come full circle. "Schedule a meeting," I said, "but use the Morgan Enterprises letterhead. Let's see if they recognize the daughter they threw away." It was time to show my family exactly what their practical daughter had become. The Montgomery Technologies building hadn't changed much in 10 years. The same pretentious granite facade, the same gold lettering above the entrance, the same security guard who never looked up from his crossword puzzle. But now, walking through the revolving doors in my Armani suit, I was no longer the teenage girl they had dismissed so easily. "Miss Morgan?" A young assistant hurried forward. "The board is waiting in the main conference room. May I take your coat?" I handed her my coat, suppressing a smile. My mother had always insisted that true power dressed in designer labels. Today, I wore enough worth of clothing to fund one of William's failed startups. "Coffee?" the assistant asked. "Green tea," I replied. remembering how my mother used to mock my preference for tea over coffee. Proper brewing time. No sugar. The elevator ride to the top floor gave me time to center myself. 10 years of preparation had led to this moment. Through my network of shell companies and discrete investments, I had systematically acquired Montgomery Technologies' debt, positioned myself as their only viable lifeline, and now held their fate in my hands. The conference room doors opened to reveal a scene that almost made me laugh. My father, Robert Montgomery, sat at the head of the table, though that position would soon be mine. My mother, Elizabeth, perched beside him, her perfect posture betraying her anxiety. And William, my dear brother who had burned through my college fund and much of the family fortune, slouched in his chair, tapping away at his phone. Miss Morgan, my father stood, extending his hand. Thank you for coming. We've heard remarkable things about Morgan Enterprises. I shook his hand firmly, noting the slight tremor in his grip. The great Robert Montgomery was nervous. Good. Please, I gestured for him to sit. Let's discuss why we're here. For the next hour, I listened as they presented Montgomery Technologies' current situation. The company needed a $50 million cash injection just to stay afloat. Their stock had plummeted 70% in the last quarter. And William's latest venture, another attempt at revolutionary energy storage technology, had drained their remaining reserves. We believe with proper investment, my father continued, his voice carrying that same persuasive tone he'd used when telling me to be practical about my dreams, Montgomery Technologies could return to its former glory. I opened my laptop, displaying a series of graphs on the conference room screen. Your company's decline began approximately 10 years ago, I said, watching their faces carefully, coinciding with a series of interesting investment decisions. William shifted uncomfortably. My mother's perfectly manicured fingers drummed against the table. We took some calculated risks, my father defended. Calculated? I raised an eyebrow. Like investing $289,000 in an unproven energy storage concept. The room fell silent. That specific number, the exact amount of my stolen college fund, hung in the air like an accusation. How did you? William started, then caught himself. I stood, walking to the window that overlooked the city. Tell me, Mr. Montgomery, what would you say was your biggest mistake in business? My father cleared his throat, perhaps expanding too quickly in certain markets. No, I cut him off, turning to face them. Your biggest mistake was sitting in this room 10 years ago, thinking she would just accept your decision and fade into the background. The color drained from my mother's face. William's phone clattered to the table. My father's expression froze in dawning recognition. Catherine? I smiled, savoring the moment. Hello, Dad. Mom. William. It's been a while. This is impossible, William sputtered. You're Catherine Morgan? Actually, it's Catherine Montgomery Morgan now, legally changed. I sat back down, enjoying their shocked expressions. But you'd know that if you'd bothered to look for me these past 10 years. My mother found her voice first. Darling, we tried to find you. No, I cut her off. You half-heartedly called around for a few weeks, then decided I was being dramatic and would come home when I ran out of money. I looked at William. How did that energy storage technology work out, by the way? The one you needed my college fund for? He flushed red. There were unexpected complications. Funny, I interrupted again, pulling up another presentation. Because Morgan Enterprises' subsidiary, Chen Tech Solutions, seems to have solved those complications quite successfully. I displayed the schematics of the energy storage system I'd helped develop, the one that had made me my first billion. My father's business instincts finally kicked in. You own Shintech? Among other things. I began listing companies on the screen. Shintech Solutions, Elite Academic Consulting, Morgan Global Ventures, and as of last month, approximately 40% of Montgomery Technology's outstanding debt. The room spun into chaos. William jumped up, knocking over his chair. My mother pressed her hands to her face. My father just stared, his empire crumbling before his eyes. Why? He finally asked. Why not just tell us who you were? I leaned forward, meeting his gaze. Because you needed to see me as you truly are, not as parents facing their daughter, but as failing business people facing someone more successful than they ever imagined I could be. What do you want? William demanded. Revenge? I laughed. Revenge? Brother dear, if I wanted revenge, I would have bought this company 6 months ago and fired you all immediately. I stood, straightening my suit. No. What I want is to fix what you broke. What does that mean? My mother asked quietly. It means I'm offering to save Montgomery Technologies. Full debt restructuring, capital injection, and technological partnership with Shintech Solutions. I paused, letting that sink in. But there are conditions. My father's business mask slipped back into place. What conditions? First, William is out. No more positions, no more investment in his ventures, no more draining company resources. William started to protest, but my father silenced him with a look. Second, you and Mom retire, Dad. The company needs new leadership, not nostalgic devotion to failed strategies. And third? My mother asked, her voice barely a whisper. Third, I smiled, you all admit that sending me away was the best thing you ever did for me. Because everything I built without the Montgomery name, without the family connections, and without your money. Silence fell over the room. My father looked at the empire I'd built, displayed on the screen behind me. My mother's eyes filled with tears. Whether from pride or regret, I couldn't tell. William slumped in his chair, finally confronting the reality that his younger sister had achieved everything he'd failed to do. Do we have a deal? I asked, knowing the answer before they spoke. My father nodded slowly. We do, Miss Morgan. Good. I gathered my things, preparing to leave. The papers will be drawn up by tomorrow. Oh, and Mom. I paused at the door. The local community college you suggested. They're one of my charitable foundation's biggest beneficiaries now. Turns out practical decisions can lead to extraordinary results. I walked out of the conference room, out of the building that had once represented everything I couldn't have, and into the waiting car where Maria, my first boss, now my company's chief operating officer, waited. How did it go? She asked, handing me a perfectly brewed green tea. Exactly as planned, I replied, taking a sip. Though I think I'll keep the diner story out of the official company history. She laughed. Are you sure about this? Saving their company after everything they did. I looked back at the Montgomery Technologies building, thinking about the scared 18-year-old girl who had left home with just $200 and a determination to prove herself. You know what I learned in that diner, Maria? Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying what others built. It's building something so much greater that they're forced to acknowledge their own mistakes. And did they? I smiled, thinking of my father's face when he realized who I was, of my mother's tears, of William's final defeat. They will. Every time they see the new company letterhead, Montgomery Morgan Technologies. You're keeping the Montgomery name. Of course, I said, opening my laptop to check the markets. After all, I did promise to support the family business. I just did it my way. As we drove through the city, past the skyscrapers and offices that had once seemed so far out of reach, I thought about that acceptance letter to Princeton, still preserved in my office. I had framed it alongside my first business license, my first $1 million contract, and a simple name tag that read Kate, server, from a certain 24-hour diner. Sometimes the best future isn't the one that's planned for you, but the one you build for yourself. $1 at a time. One dream at a time. One victory at a time. And sometimes, just sometimes, $200 and an unwavering belief in yourself is worth more than all the family fortunes in the world.